Hey, how's it going? It's Ollie here. So today we're going to be talking about pay-per-click advertising or Amazon sponsored advertising. So what is it exactly? How do you use it? How do you set up your first campaign? And what's the best strategy to get real results with advertising long term and actually make some profit? So today what I thought I would do is answer all of these questions, right, in a lot of detail. Actually walk you through a campaign and show you exactly which buttons to click, and then talk a little bit more broadly about how and when to use this when you're selling on Amazon. So what is sponsored ads? What is pay-per-click advertising? So you know when you're shopping on Amazon and you're looking for a product to buy, you type in something into the search bar and you scroll down maybe the first page. You see right at the top of the page, in the middle and at the bottom, there's some listings there, some products for sale that say sponsored in small writing underneath the picture or above the picture. Those products are being advertised. So what this means is people are paying money to get their product onto the first page of the search results so you can see it, right? Because all the other products that don't have sponsored on them, those sellers have had to earn that position in the sales results through getting tons and tons of sales and through being a very established seller. So sponsored ads can be a great way for you to get your product right in front of the customers, right on that top of that first page from day one as you begin selling your product. So what I wanted to do is go through Amazon's own tutorial for how to set up your campaign, and I'm going to comment on it and offer my advice as to how to do things slightly different from what they suggest. So let's have a look at the video.
Creating your first advertising campaign with sponsored products is easy. Here's how to get started. In this video, we will cover the campaign creation process by selecting the ad type, setting your campaign settings, selecting your targeting, adding keywords and negative keywords if applicable to the campaign, and launching your first sponsored products campaign. Before you start, consider a few things. Which products do you want to advertise? Remember, you can advertise any of your buy box eligible listings. And how much you want to spend. You'll be able to set your bid and budget.
So a couple of points here. So when you're thinking about which products to advertise to sell on Amazon, this strategy is much better used when you have your own product, so your own brand, so your own private label product or something like that. If you're doing arbitrage, if you're doing wholesale, you can use pay-per-click advertising, but quite often you'll be sharing a listing with other sellers. So what that means is if you drive a load of traffic to a listing and the listing gets ranked better because it's had more sales, the product gets more reviews because of your sales. If you can't find that product anymore or you stop selling it after a while, what you've done is you've boosted that product's position in the search results, and you're not really going to see the fruits of your labor because you're not going to have any more stock. As you'll discover as we talk about this stuff, sponsored ads is quite a long-term strategy and isn't always profitable from day one. So it's much better to do this stuff when you have your own private label product. Oh, also, it's best to have one product per campaign. So let's say you do a launch where you have 3 different products and they're slightly different designs. Have one campaign for each design. Don't bundle them all together and just run one campaign for all 3, because it won't be able to optimize for the specific keywords you need for each different product.
To get started, if you are a seller, go to the Advertising tab and click on Campaign Manager.
Now this layout that we have here might look a little bit different when you go to your Amazon account, because Amazon change all of this stuff almost monthly. Like something has changed within the account. They're always testing stuff, so it looks a bit different. Don't worry.
If you are a vendor, simply click on Advertising and you'll be brought to the Campaign Manager page. Click Create Campaign and select Sponsored Products. Now let's set up your first.
So those other two options can actually be helpful. The product display ads and the sponsored brands can be useful, but that's for later down the line. Always do what they say, just stick for the sponsored products. That will get you those listings that appear on page 1, like I talked about earlier, where you type something in and you see the product right at the top of the page with sponsored underneath the listing.
Sponsored products. Now let's set up your first campaign. To begin, give your campaign a name. This might be the type of products you'll be advertising, seasonal merchandise you're promoting, or anything else you want to use to distinguish the campaign and keep multiple campaigns organized.
Now, when you're naming campaigns, it's quite important to keep it organized. Now, I'm terrible at this, I'll be honest, right? My naming conventions for these campaigns, sometimes I'll just type in something completely random, and it's not something terribly wrong with it, but the better you can be at organizing the names of your campaigns, you'll thank yourself later, right? Because when you come back to analyze what's going on with your advertising, it really helps if you've put the name of the product as the campaign name, or at least as the ad group name, just so at a glance you can easily analyze what each campaign is doing. So just a tip, like, name them something memorable, and maybe even add a date or something, and an objective for each campaign you're creating.
Next, set your campaign duration. You can choose to let your campaign run continuously, starting today, or set a start and end date for the campaign. We recommend an always-on approach and starting the campaign immediately to ensure your ads are active at all times, so shoppers can discover your products anytime they search on Amazon.
So this is great advice. I would definitely put no end date and just run the campaign until there's some other reason to stop it. Because the last thing you want to do is turn on a campaign, have it get you some great results, and then have it finish, because any of the optimization that might have happened while you're running the campaign might not be there when you resume it. There's something weird about advertising campaigns. Sometimes when you turn them off and then back on again, the results are kind of different to what they were. So this is great advice.
If you need to, you can pause your campaigns after they've gone live. Then, set your average daily budget. This is the maximum daily amount you want to spend on advertising the products in this campaign. You can adjust this at any time.
So a word about budget. When you're trying to decide what type of budget to have for your campaign, as I'll tell you about in a second, we really want to run this campaign for a minimum of 2 weeks. Okay, so when you think about your daily budget, remember you're going to have to run this for 14 days. So it needs to be sustainable. So if you can budget, say $10 a day or £10 a day, then that will need to be £10 a day for 14 days. So a total of £140 spent on advertising. We don't want to run a campaign for 2-3 days because it just won't have time to learn how to sell your product. So think of a budget that you can sustain for at least 2 weeks.
Amazon offers 2 distinct ways to target your sponsored product ads. We recommend starting your first campaign with automatic targeting.
So I agree with that, right? Automatic campaign, it will just basically do everything itself. The manual campaign is great and we can test it. Sometimes the automatic will work better, sometimes the manual will work better. But in the beginning, it's always best to start with the automatic.
This allows Amazon to automatically match your ad to relevant shopper search terms based on your product information. It is a quick and easy way to learn how shoppers are discovering your ads. We'll cover manual targeting in Create a Manual Targeted Campaign video later in the series. If you're a seller, the next step is to name your ad group. Think of ad groups as subfolders in your campaigns. You can have multiple ad groups in a campaign. This field is not available for vendors at this time. Then, select products to include in your campaign or ad group. You can search by product name, SKU, or ASIN. You'll be able to sort ASINs by the date they were added to your catalog, as well as see their star rating and the number of reviews they have. Find the products you want to advertise and click Select to add them to your campaign.
It's worth mentioning here that campaigns won't run unless your product is active and unless you have the buy box. So for any reason you run out of stock or something like that, the advertising campaign will automatically turn off. So you don't have to ever worry about a campaign running and spending loads of money, if you don't have any products to sell, or if you don't have the buy box on your own listing, which can sometimes happen.
Your selected items will appear. Now let's set your cost per click or CPC bid. The bid is the maximum amount you're willing to pay for a click on your ad. For automatic targeting campaigns like this one, the default bid will apply to each product in the campaign, so you'll want to consider the margins on each item. We'd also recommend you consider the category. You may also choose to be more aggressive and bid higher, or take a more conservative approach and bid lower. Remember, bids can be changed at any time.
Okay, so something to remember here is that when you're doing any type of pay-per-click advertising, whether it's Facebook, Google, Yahoo, Reddit, Quora ads, whatever it is, including Amazon, it's an auction, right? So everybody's bidding to get their advert shown. And a simple way of describing it is the more you bid, the higher your ad will be placed in the search results. Okay, so it doesn't quite exactly work like that, but that's a simple way of describing it. So the more you put in this default bid field, the closer your product will be to the number one advert spot on page one of the search results. So what I always recommend doing is going very, very aggressive in the beginning, just to make sure you're catching all of the clicks. If you imagine every single time someone clicks on your ad, it costs a certain amount of money for you, the advertiser, right? So if someone clicks on your ad when it's very, very high in the search results, it will cost you, say, $1.50. If it's, say, page 4 and way low down the page, it'll probably be like 30 cents or maybe less. So what we want to do is give your product the highest chance to get as many clicks as you possibly can by having it placed really, really well right at the top of the page. So go really, really aggressive at first. So I would say setting this to at least a bid of $2. You could maybe go higher, up to $5, doesn't really matter. Most expensive clicks are usually somewhere around $1.80 or something anyway, or £1.80. And then what we can do is once we've got loads and loads of clicks and loads of data from those clicks, we can have a closer look and then refine and make the campaign better as we go.
Whichever strategy you land on, we recommend you bid only as much as you are willing to pay for a click on your ad. Now you're ready to launch your campaign. Congratulations on launching your first sponsored products campaign. Your ads are now ready, but they may take up to an hour to begin displaying on Amazon. Remember, your ads need to be relevant to the shoppers and winning the buy box in order to be eligible to display, and you must also have the winning bid for the search term. If you have additional products you'd like to advertise that fall within a different category or type of product, we encourage you to create another sponsored products campaign for that line of products.
Cool. So that's how you set up the campaign. Now that is the easy bit. Okay, it's very simple. You click a few buttons and you've got your advertising campaign done. The difficult bit is the strategy and knowing how to make profit with advertising. So there's a few things I want you to remember. Number one, the key with any pay-per-click advertising campaign is to be willing to lose money to make money. That's what we want to do. We want to lose money to make money. You can't expect to turn on an advertising campaign from day one, spend a tiny little bit on advertising and get a huge return. You're not going to spend £10 a day and get £300 a day in sales. That's just never going to happen. In fact, the second you turn on your ads, it's going to look horrendous. You're going to be distraught at how bad your ACoS is, your advertising cost of sales, how much you have to spend to make a certain amount of money. It's going to look awful, and it's supposed to, right? So if you have this in mind before you start creating the campaign, you won't have any nasty surprises. So what we want to do is really wait until you've got a huge amount of stock before you go really aggressive with your pay-per-click advertising. Now, if you're testing and you've got a few units, maybe 20 units, 50 units of a product, you can turn on some ads and you can see some sales. You won't make profit, but you'll see some sales. To make profit, we need a larger order, maybe 500 units of stock, or maybe 1,000 units of stock, something like that. So when we're thinking about profit, I want you to think in terms of annual sales. Okay? One of the big mistakes that a lot of new Amazon sellers make is they start thinking about how much profit they're going to make this month and how much they're spending this month on advertising to get that profit. Your first month launching a product is always going to be pretty ugly, right? You will start to get much better results after a few months. And if you look at your profit over a whole year, then it should be very healthy. So keep this in mind as we're starting to run pay-per-click campaigns. So why do we have to think in terms of annual sales? Well, what we're aiming to do here is absolutely blast the pay-per-click for the first 2 to 4 weeks to do everything we can to get your product to page 1 on the search results organically. Right, so not the advert, right, that says sponsored on it, but the actual listing. We want it to be searchable and to get up to page 1 on the search results. So when you do this, we want to spend as much as we possibly can on pay-per-click advertising, okay, within reason, right? We want to be getting results and consistent sales, but we want to spend as much as we can, right? We want to actually make a loss in the first few weeks of running your campaign, because what will happen is the products will get organically to page 1, and at some point you should be able to either drastically reduce the amount you're spending on advertising, or in some cases with some niches you can actually turn the advertising off and the product will still continue to sell. So this is what we want to get to, and when you get to that point, your profit margins will increase so much that over time you'll be profitable, right? So, month 1, for example, you might spend £2,000 on pay-per-click advertising and you might make £1,500 in sales, and you'll be looking at your screen dumbfounded, wondering how things have gone so horribly wrong, right? But if you continue to sell the products and you get to the point where you're doing £5,000 a month in sales and you're spending maybe £400 a month on pay-per-click, even though that first month was bad, over a year, now you're making consistent profit, and now you've made up for that loss that you made in month 1. Another thing that we touched on before to always bear in mind is allow time for your campaign to learn. Now, whenever an automatic campaign is running, it's always trying to learn from anything that happens with the advert, right? So, for example, it takes the data on how many people see the advert. It takes the data on how many people click on the advert. It takes the data of which keywords were entered into the search bar to get the ad to appear when people clicked on it. So it starts to learn which keywords are associated with your product. And sooner or later, it's very, very efficient, and it's showing the product to the right people at the right time. All of this stuff takes time. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of your campaign are going to be disastrous. The results are going to be bad. It's because the campaign's trying to learn. So this is why we always want to leave a campaign on for at least 2 weeks, so we give it a chance to learn. So what about when we want to move on from an automatic campaign? What about when we want to optimize your advertising and make things better and cheaper and more sleek and more optimized? Well, we need to test. In fact, advertising doesn't matter what platform we're talking about, testing is key. So we want to test everything. Right? We want to test different keywords if you're running a manual campaign. You can test negative keywords on the automatic campaign. Okay, when you set up your campaign, you'll see there's a field for negative keywords. When you generate a report of your advertising campaign, you'll see that there's a load of keywords that are being used that are completely irrelevant to your products. You can put them into the negative keywords so the campaign doesn't use them anymore. Also, we can test using an automatic campaign versus a manual. Sometimes the auto does better, sometimes the manual does better. We don't know which one's going to perform better, we just have to test. We can test a different bid price. Sometimes you go really aggressive and you get loads of clicks, you generate a report of your campaign and you have a look and you notice that most of your clicks are, say, under £1. Only a few of them are, say, £1.30 or £1.50. So if you were to reduce your bid price to, say, £1.10p or something, you'll still be getting most of the traffic and most of the clicks, but your cost will be slightly reduced. So you can test reducing your bid price and see how it affects your spend versus your sales. You might realize that you've lowered it too much, or you might realize that you could lower it a little bit more. The more you just keep testing things, the more you'll get more data about how the campaign will run, and things will start to get more and more refined. Another thing you can test is keyword match types. Now, when you do a manual campaign, there's different match types you can have for each keyword. There's broad, there's exact match, there's phrase match. We don't know which of these is going to work the best generally, so we can just test loads of different combinations, and sometimes you'll find that one particular match type gives you better results, more clicks, more sales, and that's the one we should go with. But again, we only know this stuff once we test it. Now, when we're thinking about how well an advertising campaign is performing, there's only two metrics we should ever consider. Number one, how much are you spending? Number two, how many sales are you making? Now, these are two elements at either end of the spectrum with your campaign. Okay, you spend some money, you get impressions, which is people seeing the ad, you get people clicking on the ad and looking at the listing, and then at the end you get people buying the product, or in some cases not buying the product. Now, you can get really obsessive over every single one of these metrics in between you spending money and making sales. You could get obsessive about the impressions, about the clicks, and everything in between, the different keywords, things like that. But really, all those things don't matter. All that matters is how much we're spending on the ad and how many sales we're generating because of the ad. Everything in between, the keywords, the impressions, the clicks, all that stuff is a way to find out why you're spending a certain amount and why you're making a certain amount in sales. So those two metrics are the most important thing. All the stuff in the middle tells the story of what's happening with your advertising campaign. And finally, I just wanted to reiterate, this is a long-term game. We're not aiming to spend, a little bit of money in the first 3 days on an ad and make a little bit of money in those first 3 days. This is something you should aim to invest in to make money over a long time, right? We want to launch products that will sell for months, products that will sell for years, right? So we should be willing to invest in advertising to get better placements for our products organically in the search results. And really, by having a long-term vision, you'll be less upset about terrible results in the first month and about going into the red in the first few weeks. Because you'll know that this stuff leads to you getting more sales long-term. Cool. So I really hope this video has given you some helpful advice about how to approach PPC or sponsored ads on Amazon. If you liked it, please leave a like, leave a comment, tell me what it is that helped you about this video so I know to do more of that in the future, and definitely click subscribe if you haven't done so already. Cool, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next week.